Hi everybody, it's Julianne of the My Modelings podcast here. This video is a little bit different to my normal. I was tagged at the end of last year by Karen from Simply Stashless podcast to do the Fibre Arts Tag. And although I thought it was fun, I hadn't gotten round to it yet. So I thought I'm at a bit of a loose end today. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. It's a little bit warm today, so I'm trying to keep things a little bit on the down low this week, just so I can keep cool because our house doesn't have air conditioning. So I thought it might be fun to make this video for all of you. So here I am. And the Fibre Arts Tag, if you aren't aware, is a list of 21 questions that fibre people answer so that you can learn a little bit more about what I like to do and a little bit more about me perhaps. So I'm here sitting on the couch nice and comfy. I've got a cup of coffee and I guess without further ado I should just start. So the first question is, who are you? Well, obviously I've just said I am Julianne and I am a hand dyer and I dye under the label Lovebird Lane, and I live here in Adelaide, South Australia, and I live with my husband Simon, who we've been married since 2013. So yes, we live here with our babies, but they are a fur baby and a feather baby. We don't have any human babies. And Granger, of course, if you follow the podcast at all, you will have seen Granger. He has a rather large fan base. Sometimes I think he probably has a larger fan base than I do, but that's fine because he's adorable. And our other baby is Marion, who is a lovebird. So she and her brother, unfortunately her brother passed away, but they were the inspiration behind the name of Lovebird Lane. So yes, she is outside today. So if you have watched the podcast, you will have heard her squawking away. She is very noisy. She's very demanding. And yes, so she's outside today. It's going to be about 33 degrees here today, which she seems to thrive in the hot weather. I hate it. But yes, I've popped her outside so she can talk to all her birdie friends. You might be able to faintly hear her in the background. I can hear her right now, so the camera probably is picking her up, which is hilarious because we moved in August. This is a new property to us, and the kitchen is a little bit of a black hole, and if Simon's sitting out here in the lounge room, because it's sort of a long house, so it's like rooms going backwards, and if Simon's out here and I'm in the kitchen and I yell to him or vice versa, we actually really can't hear anything. Like sometimes we can hear that yes, there is a sound coming from a human being, but we can't make out words or anything like that. So it's hilarious that she's all the way out in the backyard and I can hear her here in the front of the house. So yeah, she's piercing sometimes. So I think that's pretty much it about me. I could go into my whole life story, but I don't think it's really necessary. I was born in Sydney, in Australia. I have lived in Hobart as well, which is in Tasmania. My mum's from Tasmania, so yeah, and then we moved back to Adelaide and that's where I've been ever since. So yeah, I have a younger sister who is a whole sister. I have two half sisters and they live in Sydney. So yeah, I don't really have a very big family. I think all of my grandparents have passed away now. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, we've always had a pretty small family. So I think as such, I am a little bit of I'm not a loner. I'm just very happy being on my own or in small groups. So I'm very much an introvert. If you meet me in real life, please don't be put off if I'm a little bit taken aback if you approach me, because I have social anxiety. I have anxiety in general. So yes, I will warm up very quickly, but I am an introvert and I have social anxiety. So sometimes I'm a little bit quiet if you were to meet me in real life, but I soon warm up to people. So I think that's probably all about me. other than nitty-gritty kind of things, but I might move on to question 2 because this video might end up taking a long time if I'm going to blather like that on all of the questions. Alright, so number 2 is why did you start knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving? Well, I actually started with, oh gosh, long ago. I started with long stitch, probably before I was even a teenager. That was my first sort of fibre-y craft. So I did long stitch for quite a while. I remember doing that at high school. I gave one to a friend for a present because she likes tigers, so I did a long stitch of tigers and framed that for her. So I know long stitch, I'm pretty sure long stitch was my very first craft. Then I moved on to cross stitch, and I used to do a lot of cross stitch. But as for knitting and crocheting, I think my mum tried to teach me how to knit when I was younger, but I never really got it, and I lived for years under the assumption that I couldn't knit. And I took up crochet instead, and I crocheted this colourful blanket that's on the back of my lounge, and that was probably one of my first big projects. It was crocheted from some Peyton's yarn. I got the pattern from a Better Homes and Gardens magazine. But basically back then I used to just crochet a lot, just making up my own things, doing chevron blankets and granny square blankets and things like that. I never really did garments or hats and accessories and things like that in crochet. It was mostly blankets. I did pet blankets and that kind of thing, and more often than not I would crochet something and then rip it all out and crochet something different. So I just kind of used to recycle the yarns, and I've actually recently found some old pieces of crocheted fabric that I had started. I think I'd started doing some sort of granny square blanket, but I think I must have obviously gotten sick of that idea and thought of all the seaming together, and I've started doing just a big granny square out of it. So I recently found that in my craft room when we moved, and I'm pretty sure that's just acrylic yarn, so I don't know how likely I am to work on that anymore. But yeah, so yeah, I was definitely a crocheter first, and I did that for a long time, but only a bit off and on because, like I said, I only mostly did blankets and things like that. I first really tried to start knitting when was that? It was 2013, I believe, April 2013. Back in 2013, sort of 2012, 2013, I went into a very large bout of major depression, and as part of that I gave up work eventually, but before then I started knitting. I'm not really sure what the impetus was to start knitting, but I did, and of course after so many years of telling myself that I can't knit, I pretty much picked it up, and it was what was the pattern that I used? I used a pattern, I think it was called the single row scarf or something. I'm not entirely sure what it was called because I never actually finished it, so it's not in my projects on Ravelry or anything like that. I did find the pattern on Ravelry. So yeah, I did that, and then I discovered, hey, maybe I can do this knitting thing, because previously when I tried to knit, you know, it's the typical dropping stitches, having holes all over the place, you increase stitches, and yeah, so I always just thought, oh, I'm never going to get this, never, ever, ever. So anyway, yeah, I tried the single row scarf, and who knew, but I actually discovered that I can knit. So yeah, I pretty much did only a few rows on that. I didn't do a whole heap, and basically pulled it apart and tried to start something new. So yeah, and I actually found with my mental health issues that I was having, the knitting actually really helped to sort of stop the ruminations in the brain, because that's something that I tend to overwhelm myself with ruminating thoughts. And yeah, I found when I was devoting myself to a project and I was trying to learn and things like that, that it helped to calm my brain and stop those crazy lizard brain thoughts that you get when well, at least when I get my mental illness bouts. So yeah, and I've kind of never looked back since then. So April 2013 is when I started to knit. Spinning, I remember it being, I think, a November, but it could have been November 2015, I think. So I'd wanted to spin for a really long time before I actually did, and then I purchased a spinning wheel off a friend of mine. So my first spinning wheel was my Ashford Traditional. So yeah, because when I started knitting, I thought, oh, I really want to be able to make my own yarn to be able to knit. And yeah, so it just kind of came from there. And then I had the opportunity to buy the wheel from a friend, and I did. And it took ages for me to get it right, and I realised I was talking to a spinning friend of mine, a different friend. She actually, I was trying and it wasn't working, and I couldn't get my yarn to go up onto the bobbin, and she basically said, do you have a brake band on your wheel? It doesn't look like you have a brake band. So that was actually what the problem was. I didn't have a brake band on my spinning wheel. So yeah, I think that was late 2015 that I learned to spin, and I'm just pretty well self-taught. Craftsy was where I got a lot of my spinning info. A few classes that I have done or purchased on there, and YouTube is your friend if you want to learn knitting. So that's where I learned how to knit. It was basically just on my own with YouTube. So yeah, I think that's question 2. I think that's all the information that you're going to need. Just have a sip of coffee. Okay, number 3 is your favourite or proudest make. And this one's a bit hard for me because honestly, this will be what, 2018, so it'll be 5 years this year that I've been knitting, and I still think knitting is magical. That you can take a piece of string and create something from that. So favourite or proudest, I'm always proud when I finish something because I just find that the whole idea of knitting incredible. So, but I probably would say one of my favourite things that I knit was actually the blue sand cardigan that I knit for my mum. She picked the colours for it. I'll pop some photos in so that you can see, but she picked the colours for it, and they were really lovely colours, and they're not colours that I necessarily would wear myself. So I got to knit that pattern in colours that I wouldn't necessarily wear, and yeah, it was just a really enjoyable project. I think at the time it was the biggest and most complicated cardigan, probably still is, that I have ever knit. I have one on the needles for myself, so I'm hoping that I can knock that out in the current make along that's going on over in the Ravelry group. So I can have that for winter this year. That would be lovely. So yeah, I'm pretty sure the blue sand cardigan that I knit for my mum is probably one of the favourite things that I have ever knit. As for proudest, I don't really know. But because like I said, I feel proud every time I finish something. So yeah, maybe we'll just move on just to keep things a little bit more succinct. So question 4 is, what is your most disastrous make? That's a hard one because, gosh, I can't even think. See, because I don't think I've ever really had disasters. Probably the thing that you could maybe classify as a disaster, if it was something that you really wanted, was the first garment that I tried to knit. I apparently had enough yardage to make the size that I wanted to knit. And I'd knit the whole body. It was a seamed cardigan. I can't remember. It was one of the Miski? Miski yarn, something like that, I can't remember. But yeah, I was knitting it out of a wool and mohair blend, so it could have been the fact that it wasn't a wool, straight wool. I did have trouble with all the mohair, with it getting matted, and I guess my stitches probably may have used up more yarn than they really needed because of the mohair, because it was a brushed mohair as well, so it was very, very fluffy. So yeah, I actually ended up not having enough yardage, and I think I probably was able to get the two front sides, the back, and one sleeve done. So I don't think I would have had enough to do the other sleeve and the button band. So, I mean, I didn't love that. I wasn't hugely attached to it. So, yeah, you could consider it a disaster if you were really invested, but I wasn't really invested. So, you know, that ended up getting thrown in the bin. I just threw it away because the yarn, there is no way I was going to be able to frog it because it just was so tangled. Sorry about the break there. There was some guy cutting trees next door and then he decided to use the wood chippers, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. But that was question 4, so let's get on to question 5, which is, do you have a favourite place to buy yarn or fibre? I would have to say for yarn, I'm a little bit promiscuous. I like to try lots of different dyers and fibres. So yeah, I would say for yarn, it's just kind of wherever I am at the time. Sometimes I buy commercial yarn, sometimes I buy hand-dyed yarn. I don't tend to buy hand spun because when I have bought hand spun, I've been very disappointed because it's not the kind of yarn that I like to knit with. I've gotten to the point now with my spinning where it is yarn that I like to knit with, so I tend to stick with my own. Some of my favourite places to buy yarn would be like Eat Sleep Knit in America. I like their, they've got a lot of hand-dyed, or they're all hand-dyed yarn. I guess Finch Yarns, who are friends of mine, I really enjoy their yarn. And of course, Wool and Vine Yarns. I'm a massive Wool and Vine Yarns fan. I don't have a ton of her yarn because it is often hard to get, so I do have a few very lovely skeins. And as for fibre, there's only really one place that I tend to buy my fibre from. I mean, I do have some Three Waters Farm fibre, and I have some fibre from the Seventh Girl, who's also another friend who I've done markets with. I have some fibre from both of them. I have fibre from Hilltop Cloud as well, which is quite lovely. My Amelia Beret pattern was knit from some Hilltop Cloud hand spun. I have got some stuff from those places, but probably my favourite place to get fibre would be from Kathy's Fibres, who actually is a dyer here in the Adelaide Hills, so I do like to buy braids from her. I haven't bought any for probably a year or so now because I haven't spun a lot last year, so I've got quite a stash. I really should get through it because I don't want it to get old and potentially have infestations of moths and things like that. So I really should get to that and spin it up. But yeah, probably Kathy's Fibres would be the first place that I would go to get fibre, because she not only has repeatable colourways that she has quite often always in stock, but she does like limited edition little runs, often more tonal colours, which is what I like to knit with. I like to knit with more tonal colours, but I do enjoy spinning the vibrant, bright, variegated, so she has both, and she's really affordable and it's beautiful quality. So yeah, Kathy's Fibres would be where I get my fibre from. Number 6, what is your most used or most loved pattern? Now this is a really, really hard one. I'd probably say my most used pattern would be my new pattern that I wrote up for Vanilla Socks. So, you know, super exciting there, Vanilla Socks. But yeah, my new vanilla sock pattern would probably be my most used pattern. And as for most loved pattern, that's a really hard one. I would probably say that my most loved pattern would have been a shawl of some kind. Probably the one that comes to mind is the Waiting for Rain shawl. I can't remember Sylvia. I'll put it I'll put it up on the screen. But yes, my Waiting for Rain shawl was one that I really loved knitting. That was such a fun project, especially with the short row lace sections that are in that. They were quite fun, and they were exciting to get to those points. I also knit it from some Unwind Yarn Company yarn, which was beautiful. So yeah, I probably would say that's the one that comes to mind as being the most loved pattern that I have knit. Number 7, your most dreaded knitting / crochet / spinning task. So, spinning, I kind of enjoy everything about spinning. So I don't think that there's really something in spinning that is dreaded. I would probably say for the other two crafts that although it's not my most dreaded, it's not my most favourite. I don't really dread anything about my crafts, honestly. It's not my favourite, but probably weaving in ends. I'm sure I'm not the only person to say that. But yeah, probably weaving in ends if I can get away with it, like on my a project that I'm going to talk about later, I think for one of the questions. I will magic knot the ends together. If I have a feltable wool, I will do splice joins so that I don't have any ends. I can just one big long continuous piece of yarn. And often I will either carry in a shawl that's got maybe multiple colours. I will probably carry it up the side if at all possible. If not, I tend to weave in as I go so that I don't have a massive, job right at the end to weave in all the ends. And it's not like I weave in the ends every time I change colour. Like I might do, 5 or so colour changes, and then I'll go through and weave in all the ends, and then I'll do some more, and then I'll weave all those in. So yeah, I'd probably say weaving in ends is probably my least favourite job with the crafts. And my favourite task, okay, so my favourite task would probably be, because I'm assuming that knitting itself isn't considered the task, I would probably say that my favourite thing to do there's kind of two, blocking lace is one, to see it all relax and to really show up, and my other one is seaming. I know you guys are probably going to think I'm mental, but I find something absolutely magical about mattress stitch, and the fact that you can go up the side, and if you're careful, it just looks like continuous V's all the way around, and I find that really magical. And just when because you can be seaming it together, and then you eventually pull it tight to snug it up so you can continue, and that point when you pull the yarn tight to snug up the two sides, I kind of live for that. Although I don't always knit a lot of seamed sweaters, I just love that snugging up of the stitches to bring them all in and keep it all nice. And yeah, so I'd probably say that's probably one of my favourite tasks. I know a lot of people probably think I'm absolutely mental. I went to a knit night last night, my first ever knit night last night, and someone was talking about seaming And she's like, oh, I hate it. And I'm like, no, it's fantastic. I love it. So yeah, seaming are probably my most favourite task. Number 9, what is your favourite crafty entertainment? So that would be a toss-up of 2 things, and that would be YouTube videos. So whether it's podcasts, or I like to watch a lot of paranormal and supernatural podcasts. I like anything supernatural or paranormal anyway, and so I have a few channels that are paranormal / supernatural, and I have quite a few podcasts that I like to watch. So that would be one thing, is YouTube, and the other would be Netflix. And when I'm watching Netflix while I'm crafting, it's more than likely going to be either a really bad horror film that, you know, kind of either a groany type, like you're like, ugh, what'd you do that for? Or so bad it's funny kind of horror film, or a true crime show, but one of the more, like, not the documentary style that's like really kind of serious where you can learn things and that kind of thing, but more of the, although I do like things like Forensic Files and that kind of thing, and but yeah, generally I go to the more, what's the word? I can't think of the word, but the more trashy, I suppose, kind of. I'm not a reality show watcher, like reality TV. I don't really watch that, but I do watch those true crime, trashy documentary kind of shows. Generally, it's something, I will watch something that doesn't need a ton of attention to it. Yeah, that's probably, like, if I'm in for a real hardcore day of crafting, that's what I go for. Okay, so I'm up to question 10. We're nearly halfway. For patterns, do you prefer books, magazines, Ravelry, or would you rather make up your own? 100% Ravelry. Ravelry is magical. And although I do have books, I have purchased PDF magazines. I don't know if I've done a lot out of any of the magazines that I have purchased. I have obviously used the books that I own, but not a whole ton. I would say probably 95% of what I have knit has been from a Ravelry pattern, whether paid or free or whatever. I would say, yeah, 95+% of what I have knit would be from Ravelry. So Ravelry's the bomb, y'all. Question 11. What is your favourite brand of knitting needles, crochet hooks, and for spinning, what is your favourite wheel? So definitely for knitting, it would be my Higher Sharps interchangeables. They're my favourite knitting needles. I also have Higher Sharps 9-inch circulars for my socks. So I will always go for Higher first if I can. I've recently been dabbling a little bit in Chiagu and Addi needles. I don't like the cords on the Addi needles. I find they're very stiff and they tend to have a lot of memory. So the projects that I have been doing on those, the cable continues to twist. I'm not sure if that's the brand that I read. If you soak it in warm water, it can soften up and get rid of that kink. I'll have to do some more research on that. And I'd probably say, yeah, Higher Sharps would be my first favourite, and I do quite enjoy the Chiagus. They are quite nice, so they'd probably be my second favourite. As for crochet hooks, I don't really have a favourite brand. Probably my favourite that I've used recently would either be Tulip hooks, but I have recently purchased a hook from Spotlight, and I cannot remember what brand it was. It may have been Clover brand, but it's more of an ergonomic handle, so I would prefer to buy my crochet hooks with some sort of padded, like a spongy kind of handle. Just because I do get quite a bit of pain in my wrists when I do crochet, so I do like to keep, because I actually had to change my knitting style as well, because I used to grab the yarn with my little finger and I ended up getting numb in those two fingers, and down into getting pain into my wrist. So I had to change my knitting style and my crochet style with the, like, when you've just got like really thin crochet hooks, because I grab it like that and then I start getting the same issue in those fingers. So if I can have a decent handle that I can keep my fingers relatively straight holding on to them, that's what I would prefer to work with crochet hooks. But as for brand, I don't really have a favourite. And for spinning, what is my favourite wheel? I have 5 wheels, so it's a hard question because they all do something, apart from one that I haven't used yet because I still don't have bobbins for it. It was a gift from a friend. It used to belong to her mum, and I don't have bobbins for that, so I can't use it. But each of the wheels does something very different. Really hard to choose. If I was to choose, I probably would choose my Wee Peggy, because not only do I enjoy the yarn that comes off it, I actually enjoy the spinning very much. I really do enjoy using that wheel. Especially my dad did an absolutely wonderful job of refurbishing her. She was in a bit of a state when I did get her. I bought her off Gumtree, which is kind of an Australian version of sort of Craigslist, kind of people put their own classifieds up. I found her on Gumtree and she was a little bit water damaged. She had lost most of her varnish that had been put on, was mostly worn away. But my dad was able to take her all to pieces, strip her right back, and revarnish her, and now she's absolutely beautiful. You would not recognise her from being the wheel that she once was. So yeah, I'd probably say Wee Peggy would be my favourite all round. I enjoy the yarn, I enjoy the spinning, so yeah, probably my Wee Peggy. What is your favourite notion or tool? I have it here for you, and that is my sock ruler, because if you know me, I knit a lot of socks. I always have a pair of socks on the needles, so I cannot do without my sock ruler. I'm pretty sure I bought this from Kathy's Fibres. She sells them, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I bought this from her. So if you're not familiar, the sock ruler, I have a sock. Basically, you use it to measure how long your sock is. So you pop it up and it's got the curved end, so if you're going to be doing, you're measuring into the heel, you've got the curved end. So I use this all the time. So, I mean, apart from things like tapestry needles, this is probably the one tool that I use the most. So I would, if you're a sock knitter, grab yourself a sock ruler because they're amazing. Okay, what is your current favourite project? Now, my current favourite project is not really one that I've been able to work on a lot recently because it's been really quite warm a lot, and it's going to be hot this week as well. So, but it is my granny stripe blanket. I have it here, and I basically was doing a diagonal crochet blanket, and it wasn't doing it for me because as it was getting bigger, the stripes were getting smaller and smaller, and some weren't even being stripes, they were being little chunks of one stripe. So I wasn't loving it. So I basically am frogging that into this, and I love this. When I first started, I spent a little bit too much time on it, and both of my wrists were very, very angry with me. So yeah, because of the weather and just wanting to give my wrists a little bit of a rest, I haven't done a lot on this recently, but I would say that this is my favourite current project. Next, my favourite place to craft in public. Now, I don't go out a lot, honestly. Being an introvert and being someone who works from home, I die at home. I don't have a studio that I go to. I don't have a lot of opportunities to knit in public. Probably the number one place that I probably craft in public would be on the bus. If I ever have to head into town for any reason. We are relatively close to town here, but and I don't mind driving in town. We do have a car. I don't mind driving in town. However, it is getting harder and harder to find free parking in the city, and I'm not sure that there is anywhere that you can park for free in the city. So unless the place that I'm going to has its own car park that's for free, which is kind of, what's the word? Like, I don't want to pay for parking, but I'm happy to pay for a bus ticket. That's kind of what I'm saying. Because I think if I'm paying for a bus ticket, then I don't, there's certain benefits to going on the bus versus driving. There's less stress. I can craft. I can listen to podcasts. Usually when I bus, I get to walk more as well, which is also a benefit. So yeah, I would always prefer busing to driving into town. So yeah, bus is probably the number one place that I knit in public. Although I did knit in a cafe last night for knit night. So yeah, so it'd be one of those two places. It would be the only places that I knit in public. I'm not allowed to knit in the movies. Simon has given me that rule because Simon is a massive movie nut, and he puts large importance on movies. So if like going to movies, I'm allowed to do it at home if we're watching a movie, but if we actually are going and buying a ticket to go and watch a film, he's given me a rule that I'm not allowed to knit because A, it's distracting for him. He can hear the clicking and that's distracting for him, and plus, like I say, he's a massive movie nut, so I respect him enough to not want to interfere with his enjoyment of the film. So, and he also wants, me to be able to pay full attention so that we can have a good discussion about it afterwards. And I'm quite happy to relinquish that to him because, yes, my husband is quite special. So I will do whatever I can to make him happy. And he's also never ever takes advantage of that, so don't get stressed. we have a very mutually beneficial relationship, so yeah, don't get stressed that he's telling me what to do. But yeah, so I don't do it at the movies, and like I say, I don't go out a lot. So sometimes if I go to my parents' house, I'll probably take my knitting. If I go to friends' house, I generally don't, even though they know that I'm a knitter and they probably wouldn't care. I just don't really do that because if I'm making the effort to go out and see friends, I kind of want to pay attention to friends. So yeah, the bus or a cafe or my parents' house are probably, not that my parents' house is really public, but it's not my house. So that'd be the places that I would knit in public. What is your favourite Fibre Arts book? All right, well, I don't use a lot of books, as I said. However, I am going to agree with Karen, and that is, this is the one physical book I have of the two. I really love Alana Dacos's Botanical Knits books, and I have the other book on PDF only. I got this one, I pre-ordered this one to get, and I got, I think it was like a stitch gauge bookmark and a free pattern, printed pattern when you pre-ordered. So yeah, I love the Botanical Knits books, and like they're just beautiful. Like the photography is amazing, and her patterns are beautiful. So yeah, I think this is probably one of my favourite books. I mean, I don't flick through it as such, but it is beautiful. And I love the patterns. So yeah, I'd probably say Botanical Knits would be my favourite knitting books. Okay, we're getting close to the end, folks. Not much longer. Number 16, do you have any other hobbies? Yes. So apart from my main ones, which would be knitting, crochet, spinning and sewing, I also like to draw. I kind of doodle. I can't draw as such, so I can't sit down and go, I'm going to draw a dog or I'm going to draw a person. I can't really do that, but I can doodle. I like to doodle. I like to read, but I mostly reserve that to winding down right before bed. Because during my waking times I'm usually knitting. I usually have needles in my hands. I like to play with polymer clay. I often put little progress keepers and things in my shop. So I enjoy working with polymer clay. I actually haven't done any polymer clay work since we moved. And I'm kind of beginning to get the itch and wanting to do some more with that. I'm thinking I might like to try some food out this year. I haven't actually done any polymer clay food, so I'm hoping to try some food charms. What else? Yeah, there's probably it. I think that's enough hobbies, don't you think? Collecting yarn. Not this year because I've put myself on a self-imposed yarn diet for the year, so yeah, that's probably all the hobbies I think. I think I probably got more, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Now, question number 17. If you could meet anyone in the fibre arts community, who would that be? So there's probably two main ones that I would like to meet. The first one would be Stephanie Pearl McPhee, who is the Yarn Harlot, because I read her blog. She's one of the few blogs that I still read. I follow her Instagram and she just seems like a really cool lady, and I would probably enjoy meeting her. And the other person would be Kristen from Wool and Vine Yarns. Because well, I guess there's two podcasters really that I would like to meet that I kind of idolise a little bit for different reasons. And I fangirl a little bit, which I won't do here. But yeah, Kristen from Wool and Vine Yarns and Molly from A Homespun House would be the two podcasters I'd really love to meet. You know, looking at sort of dream things. I mean, obviously there's some Australian podcasters that I would like to meet, but that's quite doable. So I'm kind of thinking more people who are far away from me, who is like I'll probably never meet in my lifetime. So I thought I would mention those three ladies. Now the last four questions are rapid fire, so I pretty much just have to answer straight off the top of my head. So number 18, knit or crochet? Knit. 19, weave or spin? Definitely spin. Weaving has never really held any attraction for me. 20, colour or neutrals? That's a bit hard. I love colour, and I love working with colour, but I probably prefer to wear neutrals, or at least a very strict palette of colours. So yeah, that one's kind of a bit hard to answer. Probably, I'd say both. And question number 21, sweater or socks? Again, a hard one. I mostly knit a lot of socks because they're super portable. I can take them places. I know the pattern off by heart. But I also do love me a sweater. I'd say simply for the number that I have knit, I'd have to go socks. So that's my 21 questions for the Fibre Arts tag. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope you're still there. I guess I should tag some people. Who can I tag? I guess I'll go Shara from What Shara Made podcast. If you would like to do the Fibre Arts tag, I will tag you. And potentially, who else? Maybe how about Hannah from Rose Hip Knits podcast? If you girls would like to do the Fibre Arts Tag. I would love to hear what you have to say. So I think I will leave it there. I've been talking for a long time, and thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe to the My Muddlings podcast and tune in. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.